on Fixing the Money Thing. What is the average wait time if you call the IRS with a question? What percentage of the time is an IRS answer correct? Is getting a tax refund a win? We're talking taxes today on Fixing the Money Thing. With most families burdened in unsustainable levels of personal debt, most Americans believe there is no way to have financial freedom. However, author, pastor, and financial expert Gary Keesee believes most families can be completely out of debt in less than 7 years.
You must get out of debt. You've got to make right choices with your money right now.
Gary and his wife Drenda are now on a crusade to share this information that changed their life so that you can not just survive, but prosper in today's economy.
Your life can be totally transformed by an idea in the marketplace.
This is Gary Keesee, Fixing the Money Thing.
Hi, welcome to Fixing the Money Thing. I'm Gary Keesee, and today we have a special guest, one of my great friends, Dan Pill, is with us, and we need to tap into his knowledge on taxes. Do you like taxes? I don't think anyone really loves taxes, but you know, the Bible says to pay or render unto Caesar what is legal or what Caesar demands, and the issue is for many people, well, what do I actually owe Caesar? I'm glad to pay it, but there's so many variances of what I pay. And today, Dan Pill is going to dig into the topic of the IRS and what you pay, how you pay, the problems to find out how you pay, any question. I'm going to ask him all kinds of tough questions today on helping us with the IRS and our taxes. Today, let's welcome Dan Pill to the program. Dan, it's great to have you with us. In case our audience is, you've been many times as a guest,
right.
35 years as a tax litigation consultant and 6,000 media, appearances, 14 books on the IRS, hundreds of articles. You're the president of Tax Freedom Institute. The Associated Press says you know more about the IRS than the IRS does itself, so that's pretty good. So You're the guy we want to talk to, right? We want to talk to you about taxes because taxes take a lot of money out of our pocket.
This tax burden is getting to the point where it's eating out the substance of Americans, Gary, and people just can't pay their, they can't pay their bills when they're losing upwards of 40% of their income to taxes at all levels. It's getting serious.
We deal with a lot of people with finances. We find tax problems. And
sure.
Of course, paying that liability consistently is a tough thing. It takes a lot of money to live, and then taxes just eats up so much. I tell people they have a treasure chest they don't know. In other words, if they properly handle taxes, the research I show, they can usually free up thousands of dollars a year just by knowing how to manage their taxes.
And people need to take every advantage, Gary, because it's the largest single expenditure we have as Americans. Right. It's a bigger expense than your house. It's a bigger expense than education. It's a bigger expense than your business. It's the largest single expense that we have. We've got an uninvested partner in the form of federal and state governments, in some cases local governments, in everything that we do. They're willing to cut the ties if your business is failing, but if you're successful at any level, their hand is in the pocket in a big way, and they mean business, Gary, because they've got the capacity to enforce collection with wage levies and bank levies and property seizures and tax liens.
Yeah. Well, let's dig into the topic. Let's
Sure.
get started, because I know I have questions for you, and I know our audience has a lot of questions because we feel like you do, which has motivated you all these years to kind of be the advocate for the natural citizen out there that doesn't understand this stuff. And I think that's part of the big intimidation is who understands. I don't think the IRS understands half of it, do they?
Well, no, they don't. I mean, look, we've got a tax code now, Gary, that's nearly 4 million words in length. The National Taxpayer Advocate did it's insane. But what's worse than that, in the decade, in the 10 years from approximately 2003 to 2012, 13, 14, right in that area, the National Taxpayer Advocate has confirmed that the number of tax law changes during that period of time is over 4,500 tax law changes. Gary, it's about 350 tax law changes per year during that 12-year period of time. That's insane. And to make that worse, as if that couldn't get any worse.
It got worse.
To make that worse, we have tax law changes that were made to apply retroactively. So in other words, they changed changed the law on January 1st of 2016, and the tax law applies backwards to 2015 and 2014 in some cases. This is just this sheer insanity. It's absolute insanity that we have, and what that's doing is causes all kinds of problems with the American public. You know, in my book, How to Get Tax Amnesty, I talk about the 8 worst tax problems, or perhaps maybe the most common tax problems that Americans face. And one of those problems is tax liabilities that are created as a result of tax audits. And these arise because taxpayers don't know what the responsibilities are. They think they're allowed to do this, turns out they can't. They think they're not supposed to do this, but turns out they can. And this kind of constant agitation with the tax code creates confusion that nobody can sort through, Gary. Nobody sorts through it.
I know I read an article one time that said that pretty much anyone who files a tax return, there are some mistakes on it or something they did not claim or something they did not know. Pretty much that there's something there. If you wanted to dig deep enough, you would find some variance.
If you dug deep enough, whether it's a mistake in their favor or a mistake in the IRS's favor, you know, that is dependent on the facts and circumstances of the case, of course, but there's no question about it. Now, you know, the thing that's fascinating about the changes in the code and the complexity of the code is in 2001, there was an IRS commissioner named Charles Rosati. Rosati was brought into the Internal Revenue Service. He is one of the, I think he probably is the only outsider that was brought into the Internal Revenue Service, not as a tax guy, Gary. He was brought in as a computer guy, specifically to fix the computer problems that the IRS was having. He was brought in from the private sector to introduce some sort of level of business sanity to the Internal Revenue Service, particularly in the area of the computers. And in 2001 or so, he was called to account for an explanation as to why the IRS got their answers to taxpayers' questions wrong so often. And at the time, there was a study that showed that the IRS got the answers wrong to taxpayer questions about 40% of the time. So taxpayers would call the IRS and say, you know, can I deduct this? What is the rule with that? And how do I handle this or that? The IRS would give them the answer. It would be wrong. It would be wrong 4 out of 10 times. They'd be wrong.
That's not good.
And so now the media is looking at Charles Rosati, and they're saying, how can this be? Shouldn't the IRS know the answers to the questions? And Rosati's response to me was very profound and really hit the nail on the head. He said, and this is a you know, a loose paraphrase, but it's very close to a quote. He says fundamentally we are attempting the impossible. He says the tax code is too broad in scope, and as a result of that, our training manuals are way too broad in scope to ever be successful in teaching IRS employees how to answer taxpayer questions correctly. Now, Gary, that was in 2001 he said that. Now, remember this blizzard of tax law changes that I talked about, 350 changes a year, that didn't start till 2003. So if it was bad in 2000, if it was impossible in 2001, imagine what it's like today.
So is it still 40%?
It's still high. And the fact of the matter is that most people have given up calling the IRS for advice.
30-minute wait
at all. Yeah, you know, the wait times are going up. You can't get through. When you do get through, you know, who knows what you're going to get. To the IRS's credit, Gary, they've built a website that's got a lot of information on it. More taxpayers are going to the website now than ever before. And they're getting information off the website. And so fewer and fewer people are calling the IRS, which is good because I've never recommended that people call the IRS in the first place. You know, but for one reason, the wait times today to get through are over 30 minutes. And then if you're going to wait 30 minutes to get a wrong answer, what's the point of that?
Well, Dan, we want to hear more about this, and you need to hear more about this because we're talking about your money. And Dan's going to give us some solutions and help us understand how to deal with this, how to keep the money God's given us in our pockets. He's going to talk about the 8 worst tax problems in America when we return to Fixing the Money Thing.
More with Gary and Dan after this. Today, from Gary Keesee, the Hope-Filled Package is designed to help you find money, save money, and with tax expert Dan Pilla's help, pay the correct amount in taxes every time so you can fix your money thing. To start, for only $35, get Gary Keesee's 2-CD set, There's Gold in Your Backyard. The kingdom contains hidden treasures, and only those who hear his voice will prosper. Gary teaches you that prosperity lays in the fragments others miss, where to look, and when to act.
We want to help you fix the money thing.
Next, financial freedom requires a solid foundation. And Gary's Financial Foundations Toolkit is the ultimate library of crucial financial information you need. The toolkit starts with 3 incredible Revolution of the Mind CDs on finances, fear, and money proverbs. 90 minutes of scriptures that will revolutionize the way you think. Next, you'll get Gary's highly requested teaching, Heaven, Here and Now, a guide to achieving the life you've always wanted. Also included is a special CD, How to Protect Your Retirement Investments. Call, write, or log on now to get both CD sets for only $35 or more. For those with tax questions or issues, complete the hope-filled package by including Dan Pilla's newly revised book, How to Get Tax Amnesty, for $59 or more.
This is the first book in the United States of America that ever equipped taxpayers to deal with IRS collection problems.
A nationally recognized expert in IRS procedure and the director of the Tax Freedom Institute, for over 3 decades, Dan has been tremendously successful in negotiating settlements with the IRS and helping millions of Americans find relief from tax debt.
Associated Press says he knows more about the IRS than the IRS does itself.
We want to offer relief through Dan's just revised How to Get Tax Amnesty. This 9th edition of the book contains 30% more content and has the answers you need.
I take you step by step through all of the procedures and remedies that are available to solve your tax debt problem once and for all.
Today, more than 20 million Americans owe taxes they can't pay. But tax amnesty is available to those who learn their taxpayer rights.
There's no such thing as a hopeless tax case. This book will solve your problem.
Call 888-391-LIFE. That's 888-391-5433. Write to Faith Life Now, P.O. Box 779, New Albany, Ohio, 43054. Or visit GaryKeesee.com to order the Hope-Filled Package. $35 or more for There's Gold in Your Backyard and the Financial Foundations Toolkit. For those who want to learn even more, for only $59, get both CD series plus Dan Pilla's How to Get Tax Amnesty. Gary Keesee wants you out of debt, understanding your taxes, living your God-designed destiny, and of course, fixing your money thing. Live a hope-filled life. Get on the road to financial and tax freedom. Call, write, or visit GaryKeesee.com to order your hope-filled package now.
Hi, I'm with Dan Pilla here talking about the IRS. Dan's 35-year career as an attorney, a tax litigation expert, and 14 books, 6,000 media appearances has set him as one of the nation's top experts in consumer advocacy, helping consumers know how to handle this huge distraction or lack of understanding, lack of clarity, if you will, in the IRS code. And so you're going to help us understand you've identified 8 problems that you consider the worst problems that we have to deal with working with the IRS. Let's dig into those.
Yeah, these are the things that get people in trouble with the IRS, Gary.
I want to know those.
My book, How to Get Tax Amnesty, focuses specifically on tax debt resolution strategies. How do people end up in tax debt? Yeah, well, the short answer is, well, I didn't pay my taxes. But why? How did that happen? What occurred? And I've broken this down into 8 different areas that I see happen repeatedly where people end up in trouble with the IRS. The first thing is failure to file. Perhaps the most common problem is people don't file their tax returns on time. There's a couple reasons for that. There's 2 different kinds of failure to file, Gary. The first one is financially motivated failure to file. I don't have the money. Right? I can't file my tax return, at least people
see that
think.
Most of the time,
I can't file a tax return because I don't have the money. Something happened, and so failed business, failed marriage, whatever it is. The second situation is unusual circumstances cause failure to file. And that could be a situation where you suffered a natural disaster of some kind, maybe a fire, flood, hurricane, that sort of thing, destroyed your records. Maybe you moved your business, maybe your business burned down. You lost records that way, and so you've got these failures to file that are motivated by those unusual circumstances. And what happens is when you're dealing with a failure to file situation, particularly a financially motivated failure to file, is what happens is here April 15th is coming around the corner, you know, whenever that happens, and now I've got my tax return on the desk here. I know I owe the IRS $7,000, but I don't have the money. So you don't file the return. You say to yourself, I'll file an extension. That'll give me 6 months to pay. I'll be able to come up with the money in 6 months and pay the IRS and move down the road. Well, guess what?
Not quite that simple.
It's not that simple. And it's almost never that simple, because the 6 months go by and you don't have the money. And now you say, well, you know, a little bit more time and I can make this deal and I can get this loan and I can sell this item or that item and I'll get the money, but they don't get the money. And before you know it, now the second tax return is due, and they still haven't filed their first tax return. And now they might not even have the money for the second tax return because they've been scraping for the first one, right? And so now they create a second problem, which turns into a third problem. Before you know it, you've got this long train of failures to file. It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. The IRS estimates there's between 8 to 12 million non-filers in America today. Gary, that number is as high as it's ever been. As far as the IRS's number is concerned, I believe it's higher than that, because, of course, how do you measure them? Because they're not calling the IRS and saying, hey, by the way, I didn't file my tax return, so put me down on that non-filer list. You know, people don't do that, so we just don't know.
Yeah, it is a huge problem.
Yeah. The second thing on my list here is returns that are filed by taxpayers, but they don't pay the money. And in fact, this is a common situation as well, where, you know, I gave you the scenario of the guy who's looking at his tax return on his table, and it shows that he owes $7,000, but he doesn't have the money. Well, he can file that tax return. And as a matter of fact, you should file the tax return. This is one of the ways to avoid problems, Gary, is don't avoid filing the tax return just because you don't have the money to pay the tax. There are ways to deal with not being able to pay the tax, but the IRS adds insult to injury in a big way when you don't file the return, because now they add the failure to file penalty, which can be up to 25% of the tax liability. So if you didn't have $7,000 to pay your taxes in the first place, how do you have $7,000 plus the 25% penalty later on? It just makes matters worse. Plus, of course, they add the interest on top of that. So that's a huge problem as well. The next thing on the list is tax audits. People end up owing money to the IRS as a result of tax audits. Now, tax audits can come in two forms, or I should say that the tax liability that grows from a tax audit can have two origins. It can be a legitimate tax assessment. In other words, you made a mistake on your tax return. You did something wrong. We were talking a minute ago about the 4 million word tax code that's been changed so often. People make mistakes, Gary.
Sure.
There's no question about it. People do things wrong. And so as a consequence, they go through a tax audit. Turns out they shouldn't have claimed this and they should have claimed that, and now they owe the IRS. You know, whatever the number is. I think the typical tax audit is worth about $8,000 to the IRS, plus the penalties and interest, which double the tax liability usually. So it's a big deal. But not every audit result is correct. There's a lot of bogus audits out there. And in fact, the IRS's own statistics show that the tax audits are wrong between 60 to 90% of the time. In my book, How to Win Your Tax Audit, which your program has offered to viewers over the years, it documents exactly how the IRS uses bluff and intimidation and misinformation and disinformation to get money from people they don't owe. So tax audits can be correct or they can be incorrect, but the bottom line is now you've got this tax liability you didn't plan for, now the IRS wants the money.
Now you're going to help us. I mean, you're telling us the problem. You're going to help us with an answer, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no question about it. Listen, the book, How to Get Tax Amnesty, which has just now been rewritten. This book was originally written in 1992.
I remember the first one.
This was the first book in the United States of America, Gary, and this is no kidding. This is the first book in the United States of America that ever equipped taxpayers to deal with IRS collection problems. This book has gone through 9 revisions, 3 different supplements. It's just now been rewritten. I went through every page of this book, every line of the text. I rewrote the whole thing from start to finish. It's brand new now from start to finish, and it shows you solutions to all of these problems.
It has. I mean, I've read that book many times and have recommended that book over all these years. and it has helped a lot of people. It's
Yep,
awesome.
no question about it. No
Oh, let's
question.
go on. Let's finish the list here. We're on number what?
Yeah, we're up to number 4 here now, and that's
okay.
IRS errors. And by IRS errors, I'm not talking about audit errors. I'm talking about collection notices, or what the IRS would call adjustment notices, where they send you a letter that says, dear Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we looked at your tax return for the year 2014, and we found a mistake, but don't worry, we fixed it. Now you owe us $1,472, please send a check. Well, of course, $1,400 might not be a lot of money to some people. Could be all the money in the world to other people. But of course, that's just an arbitrary number that I spit out. I've seen these things in the tens of thousands of dollars range. And so you need to know how to deal with these IRS errors. Another big problem that we see, Gary, that leads to tax liability is divorce and spousal abandonment. This happens a lot where let's say the family breaks up, they go through a divorce situation. The family court orders the husband to take care of the tax liabilities, right? There was a joint tax return. The court orders the husband to take care of the tax liabilities. Unfortunately, the man skips. He doesn't do it. Not only does he not pay the child support or the alimony if that's ordered, but he doesn't pay the taxes either. And so now the former wife, the IRS is chasing her for the money because she signed the joint tax return. She's on the hook for the liability, even though a divorce court, a family court ordered the husband to pay. The family court doesn't have authority to undermine the federal income tax laws, and under the federal income tax laws, when you sign that joint tax return, guess what? You're both liable for the tax liability. So that's a huge problem. Another problem that we've seen recently in the last 5 years is cancellation of debt. We've had how many millions of people, Gary, have gone through bankruptcy in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years as a result of the financial crisis in America? Foreclosures, short sales on their houses, negotiating with credit card companies, losing property through repossessions, and what happens now is they negotiate with these creditors, and the creditor cancels the debt and then sends the IRS a form that says you had income from the cancellation of debt. Tens of millions of people are getting blindsided by this cancellation of debt income.
Right.
And now the IRS wants money from these people for taxes on phantom income at the worst possible.
Awesome. Hey, we have number 6. We got 8. We can't finish 8 right now, but we will on the next program. We'll get into that a little more. But right now, let's talk about the solution. You've given good answers, and we want to go to it right now, find out how to get his book that answers these questions, not the problems, but the solutions. You need to get the book. You need to read the book. Let's go to that right now.
Today, from Gary Keesee, the Hope-Filled Package is designed to help you find money, save money, and with tax expert Dan Pilla's help, pay the correct amount in taxes every time so you can fix your money thing. To start, for only $35, get Gary Keesee's 2-CD set, There's Gold in Your Backyard. The kingdom contains hidden treasures, and only those who hear his voice will prosper. Gary teaches you that prosperity lays in the fragments others miss, where to look, and when to act.
We want to help you fix the money thing.
Next, financial freedom requires a solid foundation. And Gary's Financial Foundations Toolkit is the ultimate library of crucial financial information you need. The toolkit starts with 3 incredible Revolution of the Mind CDs on finances, fear, and money proverbs. 90 minutes of scriptures that will revolutionize the way you think. Next, you'll get Gary's highly requested teaching, Heaven, Here and Now, a guide to achieving the life you've always wanted. Also included is a special CD, How to Protect Your Retirement Investments. Call, write, or log on now to get both CD sets for only $35 or more. For those with tax questions or issues, complete the Hope-Filled Package by including Dan Pilla's newly revised book, How to Get Tax Amnesty, for $59 or more.
This is the first book in the United States of America that ever equipped taxpayers to deal with IRS collection problems.
A nationally recognized expert in IRS procedure and the director of the Tax Freedom Institute, for over 3 decades, Dan has been tremendously successful in negotiating settlements with the IRS and helping millions of Americans find relief from tax debt.
Associated Press says he knows more about the IRS than the IRS does itself.
We want to offer relief through Dan's just revised How to Get Tax Amnesty. This 9th edition of the book contains 30% more content and has the answers you need,
I take you step by step through all of the procedures and remedies that are available to solve your tax debt problem once and for all.
Today, more than 20 million Americans owe taxes they can't pay. But tax amnesty is available to those who learn their taxpayer rights.
There's no such thing as a hopeless tax case. This book will solve your problem.
Call 888-391-LIFE. That's 888-391-5433. Write to Faith Life Now, P.O. Box 779, New Albany, Ohio, 43054. Or visit GaryKeesee.com to order the Hope-Filled Package. $35 or more for There's Gold in Your Backyard and the Financial Foundation's Toolkit. For those who want to learn even more, for only $59, get both CD series plus Dan Pilla's How to Get Tax Amnesty. Gary Keesee wants you out of debt, understanding your taxes, living your God-designed destiny, and of course, fixing your money thing. Live a hope-filled life. Get on the road to financial and tax freedom. Call, write, or visit GaryKeesee.com to order your hope-filled package now.
I know, I want to get back to these 8 worst things that the IRS does, the problem areas. We don't have time to get into them, but at least list the next 2. You said there's 8, you've been through 6.
Yeah, I've been through 6. The last one is business debt, Gary, and this debt arises as a result of employment taxes that aren't paid on your employers. It's a big problem. That's the problem my father had. What got him in trouble with the IRS in the late 70s, it got me started in this business, was employment tax debt. And then the last thing is tax protesters. These folks that think that the tax laws are illegal or unconstitutional, and they're misled by promoters that hustle these scams, and of course that stuff doesn't work and it gets folks in trouble. So there's your 8.
There's the 8, right, and tell us quick, not much time, about the book again. Tell us, there's the answer, and
yeah, the book again. The book again is my national bestseller. It's called How to Get Tax Amnesty. This is the book that takes you step by step through solutions to all of these problems. All right, I show you
diagrams, illustrations.
I show you the step-by-step process, the IRS forms that are necessary to use to solve these problems, diagrams through the IRS system. This book is written as though you know nothing about the tax laws, so it takes you from the bottom rung of the ladder, step by step, all the way up to a solution to your problem.
Excellent. GaryKeesee.com. Get your copy right there at our website. We'll look forward to seeing you again. We're going to talk to Dan on some future programs about more tax issues. Taxes, it's a big problem. It's a big issue. So catch us next time on Fixing the Money Thing. Our website has information, but the bottom line is we want to see you win in life. God bless you. We'll see you next time.
Fixing the Money Thing is brought to you by the Ford Financial Group and Lindsay Honda and Acura of Columbus. When you need God's help, prayer is always the answer. Pastor Gary understands and wants to help. That's why he has caring friends standing by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, ready to pray with you. Call and let's agree together.
You see, every one of us in this room has an opportunity to be a rainmaker for somebody. You can help somebody. You can be their helper when there is no help. You can be hope when there is no help. You can bring joy when there's depression. You can serve somebody. You can serve a neighbor. You can serve a co-worker. You can serve somebody, because I want to tell you that people all around us are dry and parched and are looking for somebody to say to them, come on, you can keep doing it.
Pastors Gary and Drenda invite you to join them as they live stream services Saturday evenings at 6, Sunday mornings at 9, 10:30, and 12 noon. Join us for Faith Life Church online at faithlifechurch.org. Dan is just one of the many financial experts available to our partners. Consider joining Team Revolution today. Visit GaryKeesee.com for partnership and all types of Kingdom mentorship information. Today's show is a presentation of Faith Life Now.